Have you ever felt like you're trapped in a loop? Like no matter how hard you try, you keep ending up in the same toxic relationships, with the same painful patterns over and over again? You tell yourself this time will be different. You promise you'll choose better. But 6 months later you're right back where you started, wondering why you can't break free. Here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. It's not bad luck. It's not coincidence. Your brain is actively recreating your childhood wounds in every relationship you enter. And until you recognize these 5 disturbing signs, you'll keep repeating the same devastating cycle. Stay with me because what I'm about to reveal will make you question everything you thought you knew about love. Let me tell you about Sarah. Successful career, beautiful apartment, great friends. But when it came to relationships, disaster after disaster. Every single man she fell for had the same qualities: emotionally unavailable, hot and cold, impossible to pin down. Her friends would ask, "Why do you keep choosing these guys?" And Sarah would genuinely believe she wasn't choosing them. Just happened. But here's what Sarah didn't understand and what most people refuse to accept. You're not randomly attracted to certain people. Your unconscious mind is following a script written in your childhood, and it's directing you toward people who feel familiar, even if that familiarity is painful. This is the first sign. You're consistently attracted to emotionally unavailable partners. And before you tell me it's just your type, let me stop you right there. It's not a preference. It's a pattern. Think about your childhood for a moment. Was there a parent who was physically present but emotionally distant? Someone you desperately wanted attention from but could never quite reach? Maybe they were always working, always stressed, always just out of emotional reach. That childhood experience created a blueprint in your brain. It taught you that love means chasing, yearning, trying to earn affection that's always just beyond your grasp. So now, as an adult, when you meet someone who's fully available, emotionally present, and actually wants to commit, your brain rejects them. They feel boring. Too easy. Not exciting enough. But when you meet someone who's distant, unclear, keeps you guessing, your brain lights up like a Christmas tree. Finally, something familiar. Something that feels like home. The twisted part? You're not trying to repeat the pain. You're unconsciously trying to heal it. Your brain thinks if you can just make this unavailable person choose you, if you can just earn their love, you'll finally heal that childhood wound. But it never works, because you're trying to get from a stranger what you needed from a parent. And that's impossible. Comment below if this hits different. If you've ever wondered why the good ones feel wrong and the toxic ones feel right, you're not alone in this. Now let's talk about the second sign, and this one is going to make a lot of you uncomfortable. You have an insatiable need for external validation. You can't make decisions without consulting your partner. You change your opinions based on what they think. You monitor their reactions constantly, adjusting your behavior to keep them happy. You feel physically anxious when you sense their disapproval. Does this sound familiar? This isn't love. This is a trauma response. Let me explain what's really happening here. When you were a child, you needed your parents' approval to survive. Literally. Children are completely dependent, so your brain evolved to be hyper-aware of your caregiver's emotional states. If your parents were critical, unpredictable, or conditionally loving, meaning they only showed affection when you performed correctly, your nervous system learned to be on constant high alert. You became a master at reading the room, shape-shifting to avoid rejection, people-pleasing to survive. That was adaptive then. Kept you safe. But now it's destroying your relationships. You've turned your partner into a parent figure, and you're still that child desperately performing for scraps of approval. Here's the devastating truth. When you need external validation to feel worthy, you'll tolerate anything. You'll accept disrespect, infidelity, emotional abuse, anything as long as they don't leave. Because in your unconscious mind, their rejection wouldn't just mean the end of a relationship. It would mean you're fundamentally unlovable, just like that wounded child inside you has always feared. So you contort yourself into smaller and smaller versions of yourself, erasing your needs, your boundaries, your identity, all to avoid that primal terror of abandonment. And the cruelest irony? The more you chase their approval, the less they respect you. The more you abandon yourself, the more they feel justified in abandoning you too. If you've ever lost yourself completely in a relationship, if you've ever looked in the mirror and not recognized the person staring back, drop a comment. Let's talk about this. Because recognizing this pattern is the first step to breaking it. The third sign is perhaps the most self-destructive. You sabotage relationships when they start going well. You've experienced this, haven't you? Things are finally good. You've met someone who actually treats you right. They're consistent, kind, emotionally available. Your friends are happy for you. Your family approves. And then, out of nowhere, you start creating problems. You pick fights over nothing. You pull away emotionally. You cheat or you push them to cheat. You find fatal flaws that weren't bothering you before. You convince yourself you're not in love anymore. And you blow it all up. Then you sit in the wreckage wondering, what is wrong with me? Why do I always destroy the good things? Here's why. Deep down you don't believe you deserve good things. Somewhere in your childhood, you internalized the message that you're not worthy of consistent love. Maybe you were abandoned by a parent through divorce, death, or emotional neglect. Maybe you were repeatedly let down by adults who were supposed to protect you. Maybe you grew up in chaos and learned that stability is temporary, that the other shoe always drops. So now, when you're in a healthy relationship, your nervous system freaks out. This doesn't feel normal. This doesn't feel safe. Because safe, to your traumatized brain, means familiar. And familiar means painful. So your unconscious mind creates a crisis to return you to familiar territory. It's like emotional gravity, pulling you back to what you know even if what you know is suffering. The self-sabotage serves another twisted purpose. Control. If you're going to be abandoned anyway and your childhood taught you that you will be, then you might as well control when and how it happens. You'd rather blow it up yourself than wait around for them to leave you. At least that way you're not the victim. You're the one in control. Except you're not in control. Your trauma is. Your unhealed childhood wounds are running the show, and they're determined to prove that your worst fears about yourself are true. That you're unlovable. That you don't deserve happiness. That everyone leaves eventually. And every relationship you sabotage becomes more evidence supporting that devastating belief. Have you ever destroyed something good because you couldn't handle it actually working out? Share your story in the comments. Sometimes we need to say these things out loud to start healing them. Let's move to the fourth sign. You're trapped in codependent relationships where you completely lose yourself. Codependency isn't just staying in a bad relationship too long. It's a specific psychological pattern where your entire sense of self becomes enmeshed with another person. You don't know where you end and they begin. Their emotions become your emotions. Their problems become your problems. Their life becomes your life. You have no boundaries because you genuinely don't know how to exist as a separate person. And this didn't start in your adult relationships. This started when you were a child forced to take care of a parent's emotional needs. Maybe you had an alcoholic parent and you became the responsible one, managing the household, taking care of siblings, trying to fix everything. Maybe you had a depressed parent and you became their emotional support, their therapist, their reason to live. Maybe your parents had a toxic marriage and you became the mediator, the peacekeeper, the one trying to hold everyone together. Children aren't supposed to carry that burden. But you did. And in the process, you learned that your value comes from what you do for others, not from who you are. You learned that love means sacrifice, that relationships mean losing yourself, that caring for someone means carrying their pain as if it's your own. So now, as an adult, you're attracted to people who need fixing. Addicts, emotionally broken people, projects. Because that's where you feel valuable. That's where you feel needed. A healthy partner who has their life together? They don't need you the way wounded people do. And if they don't need you, what's your purpose? This is why codependent people often describe feeling empty in healthy relationships. Not because the relationship is wrong, but because they've never developed a sense of self separate from caretaking. Your entire identity is built around being needed, around solving problems, around managing other people's dysfunction. Take that away and you don't know who you are anymore. The tragedy of codependency is that it masquerades as love. You tell yourself you're being supportive, loyal, committed. But really? You're recreating the childhood dynamic where your worth was conditional on how much you could give, how much you could endure, how much of yourself you could sacrifice. And just like in childhood, it's never enough. The person you're trying to save doesn't get better. Your sacrifice doesn't lead to happiness. You just become more depleted, more resentful, more lost. But you can't leave because leaving would mean admitting that all that suffering was for nothing. So you stay and you keep giving and you keep disappearing until there's nothing left of you but exhaustion and bitterness. If you see yourself in this, if you've ever loved someone so much you forgot to love yourself, comment below. This pattern can be broken, but first you have to recognize it. Now we arrive at the fifth and most disturbing sign. You compulsively choose partners who replicate your parents' most problematic traits. This one sounds crazy until you really look at your relationship history. The woman who had a critical father keeps dating men who constantly judge her. The man who had a narcissistic mother keeps falling for women who make everything about themselves. The person who grew up with an angry, explosive parent keeps ending up with partners who have rage issues. It's not coincidence. It's what psychologists call repetition compulsion. Your unconscious mind is trying to master the trauma by recreating it, hoping this time the outcome will be different. Let me be clear about what's happening in your brain. When you were a child and experienced confusing or painful relationships with your parents, your developing brain tried to make sense of it. Why doesn't daddy show affection? Why is mommy always angry? A child's brain can't comprehend that adults have their own trauma, their own limitations. So the child concludes, it must be my fault. If I was better, smarter, prettier, quieter, they would love me the way I need. This creates what's called an incomplete gestalt, an unfinished psychological pattern. Your brain is still trying to complete that pattern, still trying to prove that you can be loved by someone who resembles the parent who hurt you. So you meet someone and they have that familiar edge, that emotional unavailability, that criticism, that unpredictability. And instead of running, which would be the logical response, you're drawn in. You think, this is my chance. If I can make this person love me, if I can be enough for them, then I'll finally prove that I was always worthy. I'll retroactively heal that childhood wound. But it doesn't work that way. Because your partner isn't your parent, and winning their love doesn't change what happened to you as a child. You're trying to resolve the past by controlling the present, and it's impossible. All you're doing is traumatizing yourself again, collecting more evidence that you're not enough, that love is painful, that you're fundamentally broken. The most heartbreaking part? Sometimes you do meet someone different. Someone kind, stable, nothing like your problematic parent. And your brain rejects them immediately. They feel wrong, unfamiliar. You tell yourself there's no chemistry, no spark. But what you're really saying is, this person doesn't activate my trauma, so my brain doesn't recognize this as love. Because to your wounded system, love equals pain, love equals struggle, love equals trying to earn affection from someone who can't give it. Peaceful love feels like nothing because your nervous system has been trained to associate love with activation, with anxiety, with that desperate reaching for something just out of grasp. Tell me in the comments, have you ever noticed that the people who hurt you most resemble someone from your past? Have you ever rejected someone good because they felt too different from what you know? This recognition is powerful. It's the beginning of change. So where does this leave you? If you recognized yourself in 3, 4, or all 5 of these signs, you might be feeling pretty hopeless right now. Like you're doomed to repeat these patterns forever. But here's the truth that might save your life. Awareness is everything. You can't change what you can't see. And now you see it. You see how your childhood shaped your relationship patterns. You see how your unconscious mind has been running the show, choosing the same painful dynamics over and over, trying to heal wounds that can't be healed through romantic relationships. The path forward isn't about finding the right person. It's about becoming the right person. It's about doing the brutal, beautiful work of healing your childhood wounds so they stop controlling your adult choices. That means therapy, real therapy with someone who specializes in attachment trauma and childhood wounds. It means sitting with the painful truth of what you didn't get as a child and grieving it, actually grieving it instead of trying to get it from romantic partners. It means learning to reparent yourself, to give yourself the unconditional love and validation you're desperately seeking from others. It means building a relationship with yourself first, learning who you are separate from your trauma, separate from your people-pleasing, separate from your need to fix and save and sacrifice. This isn't easy work. It's some of the hardest work you'll ever do. You'll have to feel things you've been running from your entire life. You'll have to set boundaries and risk people leaving. You'll have to choose differently, date differently, love differently, even when every cell in your body is screaming to return to the familiar patterns. You'll have to sit in the discomfort of healthy love until your nervous system learns that safe doesn't mean boring, that stable doesn't mean settling, that someone being emotionally available doesn't make them weak. But here's what happens when you do this work. You break the cycle. You stop passing your trauma to the next generation. You stop wasting years on relationships that were never going to work. You start attracting different kinds of people because you're vibrating at a different frequency. You start recognizing red flags immediately instead of 6 months in. You start choosing people who enhance your life instead of completing you because you're already complete. You discover that the love you were searching for outside yourself was inside you all along, buried under layers of childhood conditioning and trauma responses. Your childhood wounds will always be part of your story. But they don't have to be the author of your future. You get to rewrite the script. You get to create new patterns. You get to love and be loved in ways that actually feel good, not just familiar. It starts with recognition, continues with commitment to healing, and ends with the most radical act of all, choosing yourself. Choosing your peace. Choosing relationships that add to your life instead of consuming it. Choosing to believe, despite everything your trauma tells you, that you are worthy of real, healthy, unconditional love. If this video opened your eyes to patterns you've been blind to, do me a favor, don't just watch and forget. Leave a comment sharing which sign hit you hardest. Subscribe to this channel because we're going deeper into healing childhood trauma and breaking toxic patterns. Like this video so it reaches other people who are stuck in these cycles, who need to hear this message. Share it with someone you love who might be repeating their childhood wounds without realizing it. Because the truth is we're all carrying something from our past. We're all trying to heal wounds we didn't create. And we don't have to do it alone. The comments section is a judgment-free zone where we support each other through this messy, beautiful process of becoming whole. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll talk about specific techniques for healing each of these 5 wounds. Until then, be gentle with yourself. You're doing better than you think.